There are things in the woods we were never meant to see. Across the world, there are stories that don't make the news. Stories too horrific, too unexplainable to fit into the official narrative. Victims torn apart, bodies vanishing without a trace, and footprints too large to belong to any known predator. Authorities dismiss them as bear attacks, tragic misfortunes, or the work of scavengers. But those who have seen the truth know better. These 6 cases share one terrifying thread. Something deliberate was hunting. Something powerful, intelligent, and monstrous. If the wilderness is as safe as they claim, then why do so many disappear without a sound? On September 3rd, 2015, the McAllen family arrived in Crawford County, Arkansas, for a weekend camping trip. They had chosen a quiet spot near Northfield Hollow, a privately owned forest that bordered county land. Few people visited the area, tucked away beyond busier trails, where tall trees blocked out most of the sky. James McAllen, the father, worked in heating repair and had grown up exploring similar woods. He loved teaching his children about the outdoors. His wife, Carla, was more cautious, but supported spending family time away from phones and roads. Their daughter, Lily, 10 years old, was excited for the trip and packed a notebook and colored pencils to draw animals. They arrived early afternoon and found a clearing near a stream. A stone ring showed where others had built fires. James pitched the tent, while Carla helped Lily gather kindling. Sunlight turned golden as evening approached. They cooked simple food over the fire and sat together, watching smoke rise into the sky. Lily drew a raccoon she saw near a tree trunk. Carla smiled at the calmness of the place. James checked his watch, noting daylight was fading. Around dusk, the forest became too quiet. Even the chirps of bugs and birds seemed to stop. Carla felt a strange pressure in the air. James added more wood to the fire, keeping the light strong. Lily sat cross-legged near the fire pit, flipping through her notebook. The family sat in uneasy silence. Suddenly, there was a sharp snap in the distance, a branch breaking. Something heavy moved beyond the trees. James stood quickly, scanning the darkness. The sound came closer, deliberate, as if something was walking toward them. Then, the creature appeared. It rushed into the clearing without warning. A massive figure on 2 legs covered in dark fur, taller than any man. Its arms were long and thick, its head wide and low. Eyes reflecting firelight glowed like lanterns. Without slowing down, it charged toward the family and reached for Lily. Before anyone could react, it grabbed her and pulled her away. Its hand closed around her middle, and in one swift motion, it tore her apart. Parts of her body fell to the ground. Others were devoured as the creature vanished back into the trees. Carla screamed, frozen in place. James grabbed his phone with shaking hands and ran toward the path, desperately seeking signal. The 911 call lasted just 41 seconds. The dispatcher heard his frantic voice before the line cut. Carla dropped beside what remained of her daughter. Behind her, the fire cast long shadows on the trees. The woods remained silent again. The attack lasted less than a minute. Investigators arrived later, finding blood-soaked ground and torn clothing scattered near the fire. The area smelled of earth, smoke, and something rotten and strange. Deep tracks in the dirt resembled large human feet, wider and longer than normal. Authorities collected evidence. The official report labeled it a bear attack. But Carla, through tears, insisted it wasn't a bear. She said it stood like a man, and it had wanted them to watch. By morning, police taped off the site, investigators photographing everything. A forensic team examined footprints, torn clothing, and blood trails. Local news crews were turned away. Officials insisted it was a tragic wildlife accident, assuring residents there was no further danger. Not everyone believed that. The enormous footprints in the dirt didn't match any known animal in the area. They were spaced far apart, indicating a massive stride. Some impressions were so deep, the dry ground had cracked. Their shape resembled human feet, but had wide heels and thick toes, clearly made by something walking upright. James and Carla were held separately at the local sheriff's station. Medical staff checked them for shock, but neither spoke much. Carla refused to sleep. Her hands, still stained with dried blood, clutched Lily's sketchbook. James answered questions slowly, repeating there had been no chance to stop it. The creature had acted decisively, as if it already knew what it wanted. After giving full statements, the McCallans returned home. Reporters gathered outside their house, but the couple refused to speak. James shut the door and did not open it for days. Investigators continued studying the area, some returning at night to match sounds Carla described. One officer ventured into the woods alone with a recording device. He returned an hour later, pale and trembling. He saw nothing but felt intensely followed, describing the forest as unnaturally quiet. The trees oppressive as though the air itself had changed. The coroner's report was brief. Lily had died from massive trauma to her chest and head. Bite marks didn't match any known predator. Her body was torn apart by immense strength, and her spine had been snapped cleanly through. Officials withheld these gruesome details from the public. Newspapers reported only a child's death in a rare bear attack. Within days, the story disappeared from headlines. People soon moved on, but those who had been there did not forget. One paramedic resigned the following week. She told friends she'd seen bear attacks before, but nothing like this. She insisted the tracks she'd witnessed belonged to no creature she knew. To her, the attack seemed intentional, as if the thing had chosen its moment. Gradually, visitors stopped going near Northfield Hollow. Landowners built new fences, placing warning signs at the old entrance without explanation. Campers avoided it, and hunters found new routes. No one wanted to be near where it happened. James and Carla moved away. A year later, their house sold quietly. Neighbors said they never spoke of that night again. A small stone memorial stood in their yard, engraved with Lily's name. Though the forest returned to silence, some believed something still walked those woods, something that does not forget. On November 9, 1992, Joseph Hall, a retired schoolteacher from Somerset County, Maine, stepped onto a quiet hiking path near Asheville Ravine. At 68, Joseph had taught science for nearly 4 decades. In retirement, he turned his love for nature into photography, capturing forests, rivers, and wildlife. His home in Madison was filled with framed photographs of autumn leaves, lakes, and snowy landscapes. Neighbors often saw him leave early with his camera and backpack filled with notebooks, pens, and snacks. Joseph especially enjoyed taking photos during the fall, searching nearby forests for vivid leaves to photograph. That day, he chose Asheville Ravine, a narrow, rarely visited valley surrounded by tall trees with a small stream running through it. Joseph had visited before, but always stayed on the main trail. This time, he followed a smaller path deeper into the woods, hoping for unique photos. The weather was clear and cool, and Joseph walked slowly, carefully choosing each shot. As he moved deeper into the ravine, the forest grew strangely quiet. Birds stopped chirping, and even the stream seemed softer. Joseph paused, sensing something unusual, then dismissed it as imagination. By late afternoon, Joseph's camera was filled with beautiful images. He rested near a large rock, eating a sandwich. Suddenly, he felt watched. He glanced around but saw nothing. The feeling persisted, growing stronger. Uneasy, he quickly packed and headed back toward the main path. Joseph walked faster as branches snapped behind him and leaves rustled. Turning around revealed nothing, but the noises grew louder. As sunset approached, shadows obscured his vision. Joseph's heart raced, and fear pushed him to hurry. A terrible smell filled the air, sharp, sour, and choking. Eyes watering, he covered his mouth. With each step, the odor intensified, as if whatever caused it drew closer. Joseph began running, stumbling over roots and rocks. His camera bounced painfully against his chest. His backpack weighed him down. Heavy footsteps followed closely, growing louder and faster. Panic surged as his breathing quickened. Suddenly, something heavy struck him from behind, knocking him down. Joseph hit the dirt hard, scraping his hands and knees. He rolled over, terrified. He tried to rise, but powerful hands grabbed him, dragging him violently backward. Joseph screamed for help, clawing at the dirt. His camera strap broke, and the camera fell aside. He was dragged roughly across rocks and roots, branches tearing at his clothes and skin. Struggling desperately, he kicked, but whatever held him was too powerful. His screams faded as he disappeared deeper into the woods. His torn backpack lay abandoned, broken on the ground. 5 days later, searchers found it covered in scratches and dried blood. Nearby, broken branches and disturbed leaves revealed the violent path Joseph had been dragged along. At the end of the trail, beneath leaves and dirt, searchers found a gruesome discovery, all that remained of Joseph Hall. The ground surrounding his remains showed large, strange footprints with wide toes. Something hidden in Asheville Ravine had taken Joseph. Officials quickly attributed Joseph's death to a coyote attack, but locals disagreed. They believed something unknown lurked in Asheville Ravine, something powerful enough to drag a grown man deep into the woods and leave enormous footprints unlike any coyote. After news spread through Somerset County, Madison residents grew uneasy. Joseph had been loved by neighbors and former students alike. His death shocked and frightened the community. Parents warned children not to wander far from home. Hikers avoided Asheville Ravine completely. Investigators arrived soon after, taping off the area and carefully examining Joseph's torn backpack and large tracks pressed deep into the mud. Each footprint was huge, displaying 5 distinct, elongated toes, far too big for coyotes or local wildlife. Experienced hunters openly questioned the official story. Coyotes didn't have the strength to drag a man so far or leave such massive prints. Witnesses described a powerful, foul odor at the scene, something no ordinary animal could produce. Officials swiftly closed the area, posting signs warning hikers of dangerous wildlife. No one was allowed near Asheville Ravine after that. Yet quiet rumors spread through town, whispers about something hidden in those woods, a creature now known as the Thing in the Ravine. The local newspaper published a brief story about Joseph's life. It emphasized his kindness, love for photography, and passion for nature, but omitted the disturbing details. Most readers suspected more than what officials admitted. Joseph's house remained empty, his photographs untouched on the walls. Neighbors passing by looked sadly through windows, remembering the gentle teacher who had loved the woods. A small memorial service was held, where friends spoke warmly of Joseph's compassion and quiet charm. But behind their sorrow were lingering fears and unanswered questions. Months passed. Madison slowly settled into quiet routine, yet some residents still reported strange occurrences near the ravine. Late at night, heavy footsteps paced among the trees. Others described hearing deep, deliberate breathing, something massive moving silently in the dark. Each morning revealed nothing unusual, just unsettling silence. A few brave souls tried discovering what really happened. One local hunter, George, ventured into the woods, retracing Joseph's final steps. He returned pale, shaken, and silent, moving away soon afterward. Another, a wildlife expert, spent just one night in the ravine, quickly fleeing town without explanation. Eventually, even the bravest stopped asking questions. Parents kept children indoors after sunset. Hikers chose safer trails far away. The forest reclaimed the narrow path Joseph once took, concealing it behind dense foliage. Time passed, and Joseph Hall's story faded into quiet legend. But townspeople never forgot. Animals avoided Asheville Ravine. Birds rarely sang there. Everyone sensed something still waited deep within the shadows. Silent, unseen, patiently watching. Perhaps waiting for someone else to venture too close again. On August 17, 2004, two hikers began a journey through the Nätra forest area in Västernorrland County, Sweden. Their names were Peter Lund, a calm and experienced backpacker who had spent years exploring Sweden's wild lands, and Eric Nilsson, a younger man eager to learn more about outdoor adventures. Both friends grew up in a small town near Örnsköldsvik, close to forests that stretched for miles. They planned their trip for weeks, packing carefully, bringing tents, radios, and enough food for several days. Their hike started early in the morning. The air was fresh and cool, and birds called softly from the treetops. Peter led the way, pointing out animal tracks and plants along the trail. Eric listened carefully, noting details for later. By midday, they reached a quiet lake and stopped to rest, enjoying lunch by the shore. The forest around them was peaceful, and they felt safe in this place that felt like home. As afternoon turned to evening, something changed. The quiet calm that had followed them all day suddenly felt different. Peter noticed first, stopping often to listen, looking into the trees behind them. Eric asked what was wrong, but Peter wasn't sure. He just felt they were no longer alone. The men kept walking, more carefully now. The feeling grew stronger, like being watched by eyes hidden in shadows. They tried to laugh it off, but the silence around them was too deep, broken only by their footsteps on dry leaves. Peter checked the radio in his backpack, making sure it still worked. Soon, the sun began to set. Darkness came fast under the trees. Both hikers felt uneasy, deciding to make camp sooner than planned. They found a small clearing near some large rocks, quickly setting up their tents. But just as they finished, a strange sound came from the dark trees. A soft, careful step on leaves, barely heard, followed by another. Fear gripped them as they stood still, waiting. The sound stopped, then began again, closer. Peter whispered urgently to Eric, grabbing the radio. His hands shook as he turned it on, calling for help in quiet, quick words. He described something stalking them, big, moving silently. The radio crackled, then went quiet again. Minutes passed slowly. Both men held still, hearts racing. Then, suddenly, a huge, dark shape appeared at the edge of their campsite. It stood upright, taller than any animal they had seen, eyes shining faintly in the fading light. It moved silently, watching carefully, circling their small clearing. The hikers froze, unable to move. Without warning, the creature charged. It moved fast, striking with unbelievable power. Peter reached out desperately, but Eric was already falling, his throat crushed in seconds. The creature grabbed his body, dragging him into the shadows. Peter shouted, trying to follow, but the darkness swallowed his friend completely. Peter stood alone, shaking, terrified. The forest was quiet again, as if nothing had happened. He grabbed the radio, begging for help once more, repeating words that made no sense. All he could think was that his friend was gone, and whatever had taken him was still close, still watching. Fear filled every part of him, making his hands tremble and his breathing fast. He looked around the quiet forest, still seeing nothing. The shape that took Eric had vanished, leaving no clear signs. Everything felt empty and still, as though the woods had never known any danger. He slowly stepped backward, afraid of making noise. The only sounds now were his own fast breaths and heartbeats that he could feel inside his chest. He held tightly onto the radio, hoping someone had heard his call for help. Minutes passed slowly as he waited, watching the darkness between trees for any movement. His mind raced, trying to understand what had attacked them, but nothing made sense. No animal he knew of could move that way or strike so quickly. Soon, the low hum of a helicopter came from above. Bright lights cut through the dark forest, searching between branches. Peter waved his arms to be seen, relief flooding through him. The rescue team found him standing alone in shock, eyes wide with fear, unable to explain clearly. They quickly took him away from the forest, away from the hidden danger still lurking in the darkness. The next morning, teams searched the area carefully. They found clear signs of a struggle near the tents, large footprints pressed deep into the earth, spaced far apart. No bear or wolf tracks matched these. Further along the path, they found scattered belongings and torn clothing. And finally, in a small clearing, the searchers discovered Eric's body, throat crushed, and half his torso missing. Forensics experts checked every detail, noting the bite marks and wounds. Nothing matched any known animal. News of the event spread quickly through nearby towns. Rangers quickly announced the attacker was likely a bear, but some wildlife experts quietly disagreed. They studied the marks carefully, finding them strange and unnatural. They talked quietly about a predator they could not identify, something that hunted like no animal they knew. Peter never went hiking again. Friends noticed changes in him after returning home. He avoided nature, often keeping lights on at night. His thoughts never left that terrifying evening. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he would remember the way the creature stood, silent and watching, just before the attack. Locals stopped using the Nitra forest trails after hearing about the attack. Old stories about something big and quiet stalking the area returned. People warned each other to stay away from deep woods at night, afraid that what happened to the hikers could happen again. The forest remained silent and dark, holding its secrets tight. No one could ever say for sure what took Eric's life, leaving only questions and fears behind. On March 28, 1973, the sky above Bin Hill in Banffshire, Scotland, was heavy with grey clouds. The wind blew softly, moving through tall, shadowy trees that grew close together. Hardly anyone walked this quiet hillside path, making it perfect for seeing animals in their natural home. This was exactly why James and Lisa, a young couple who loved wildlife, chose this spot. James was 24, a kind and quiet man who worked at a camera shop in nearby Keith. He knew how to use cameras better than anyone Lisa had ever met. His shelves at home were full of books about animals and birds. Lisa, 22, had grown up in Banffshire. She spent hours writing about nature in her notebooks. Her greatest joy was watching deer and foxes move silently through the forest. Together, they dreamed of taking beautiful pictures and writing stories that others would love. On that chilly morning, they parked near the base of Bin Hill, excited to explore the area. James carried 2 cameras and extra film, ready to capture every special moment. Lisa wore a small backpack with food, water, and notebooks. They laughed softly as they stepped into the woods, enjoying the quiet peace. As they moved deeper along the trail, everything became quieter. Birds stopped singing, and even the trees seemed to hold their breath. James and Lisa paused, looking around carefully. They knew animals sometimes went silent when danger was near, but they saw nothing unusual. Still, the feeling stayed with them, making their hearts beat faster. Lisa tried to shake off the strange mood, and James smiled gently, encouraging her. They continued slowly, looking carefully for any signs of animals. After walking a bit farther, they reached an open clearing surrounded by thick trees. The ground was covered with moss and fallen leaves, soft beneath their feet. James quickly took out his camera, taking careful pictures of the clearing. Lisa watched him, smiling softly. For a moment, they both felt relaxed again. But suddenly, a sharp sound echoed through the woods, a heavy branch breaking. James looked toward the noise, his face serious. Lisa felt fear rise inside her. They saw nothing but dark trees and shadows. Then, from behind the thick trunks, something huge stepped forward. Lisa's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. It was massive, taller than any person, covered in thick, tangled fur. Its large arms hung down to its knees, and its hands looked powerful enough to tear trees apart. James stepped back, but the creature moved faster, blocking their way out of the clearing. Lisa's body shook as the beast's deep growl filled the air, vibrating in her chest. James raised his camera, his hands shaking badly. The creature stared straight at them, breathing heavily, its dark eyes shining with anger. Lisa felt tears in her eyes, fear holding her still. Then, without warning, the monster rushed toward them, its huge legs pounding against the ground. James tried to push Lisa away, but it was too late. The giant beast struck James hard, knocking him to the ground with a horrible sound. Lisa watched, frozen, as powerful jaws closed around James's shoulder, biting down violently. He screamed in pain, his voice cut off by another deep growl. Lisa turned, her heart beating so fast she could barely breathe. She ran blindly into the forest, her bare feet slipping on rocks and sticks. She could hear the creature behind her, tearing and growling. Tears blurred her eyes as she stumbled, branches scratching her face. But the creature did not chase her. It stayed in the clearing, focused on James. The last thing Lisa heard before escaping deeper into the forest was James's voice, fading into silence beneath the beast's savage growls. Lisa ran until her legs felt like they would break. She stumbled through bushes and trees, feeling sharp sticks and stones cutting her feet. The dark forest seemed endless, each shadow hiding something dangerous. She finally reached the road, her body shaking, covered in dirt and blood. A passing driver saw her and quickly stopped to help. Lisa was rushed to the hospital in Keith. Doctors cleaned her wounds, treating cuts and bruises. Police arrived, asking her questions, trying to understand what had happened. Officers quickly went to Bin Hill, following Lisa's directions carefully. They searched the clearing and the nearby trees. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then one of the officers noticed something strange beneath thick moss. Carefully pulling back the plants, they found a jawbone and partially chewed bones hidden beneath the damp leaves. Nearby, large footprints covered the soft ground. They looked like a person's feet, but far bigger. The toes spread wide, pressed deep into the earth, showing how heavy the creature must have been. Police felt uneasy seeing these marks. They didn't match any animal they knew. The police looked everywhere but found no other sign of James. They brought dogs to help track the creature, but the animals refused to go near the clearing. They whimpered and pulled back, sensing danger. Officers took pictures and collected what they found, but soon left the area feeling troubled. News spread quickly through Banffshire. Local people talked quietly about what might have attacked the young couple. Police told everyone it was wild dogs, but many didn't believe it. Lisa was sure of what she saw, a giant standing beast that let her run away. Friends and neighbors tried comforting her, but fear stayed in her eyes. For months afterward, Lisa rarely left her home. Each night she dreamed about the monster, waking up crying and shaking. She missed James terribly, carrying a sadness too heavy to explain. People stopped hiking near Bin Hill, even during the day. Soon, weeds and bushes grew thickly over the trail, hiding it from view. Lisa moved away from Banffshire the next year, hoping to leave memories behind. But wherever she went, the shadow followed. She never walked alone near trees again, always feeling something hidden watching her steps. Years passed, but the mystery remained. Some older villagers remembered other strange events in the same forest, animals going quiet, shadows moving in unnatural ways, and deep, terrible cries at night. They whispered that something ancient lived in those woods, hidden far from human eyes. Police files stayed open for years, but no new evidence ever appeared. Officers who had seen the footprints retired without answers. They remembered Lisa's frightened face, knowing she had seen something real, something beyond their understanding. Slowly, Bin Hill became only a story, whispered in towns far away. Children dared each other to walk near the woods, quickly running back laughing, unaware of the truth hidden beneath the moss and leaves. The trees kept their secret, silent and waiting. Some nights, older villagers claimed they still heard the creature scream, a sound that made dogs bark and children hide under blankets. Lisa heard it too, even miles away in her new home. She would close her windows, pulling curtains tight, trying not to remember. But the memory always came back. James's frightened face, the creature's powerful jaws, and the bones police carefully removed. A story Banffshire would never forget, hidden among the quiet hills, waiting for someone else to come too close again. On January 4th, 2019, 3 wildlife researchers set off into the snowy wilderness near the Ruby Range in Yukon Territory, Canada. Ethan Miller, a skilled biologist known for studying wolves, led the group. With him was Sarah Mitchell, an animal behavior specialist who often tracked bears, and Luke Carter, an expert in surveying wildlife in extreme conditions. The 3 had worked together many times, always careful, always prepared. Their journey began before sunrise as they headed far beyond any town or marked road. The region was notorious for bitter cold, deep snow, and brutal winds. Locals in nearby villages had whispered for years about strange sightings and unexplained tracks near Talbot Creek. But the research team dismissed them as folklore. They packed heavy clothing, reinforced boots, tents, and advanced equipment for their 2-week mission. Ethan aimed to study how animals moved through remote areas during the dead of winter. Sarah planned to monitor bear behavior in extreme conditions, and Luke's role was to help track wildlife. The first 2 days passed without incident. They observed animal tracks in the snow and once saw a pair of foxes darting near a frozen riverbed. Their campsite sat tucked beneath a stand of tall spruce trees, well shielded from the wind. They secured the tent and kept detailed notes on animal activity. On the third day, the atmosphere changed. The forest felt heavier, quieter. Fewer tracks appeared. The technology they used to monitor wildlife began to malfunction. Battery life dropped quickly, and their equipment became unresponsive. A strange tension settled over their camp. Still, they pressed on, committed to finishing their work. That evening, while reviewing their findings, Ethan noticed something unusual near the edge of the ridge: large heat signatures. The shape was wrong for a moose or bear. It moved upright. It was huge. They planned to investigate in the morning. But that night, a snowstorm swept through. Cold winds howled. Around midnight, Luke was jolted awake by the sound of breathing, low, deep, and just outside the tent wall. He roused Ethan and Sarah. None of them moved. The breathing continued. Footsteps slowly circled the tent, crunching in the snow. No one dared reach for a flashlight. Then came the tearing. The tent walls ripped open. Snow and freezing air rushed in. Screaming, the team scrambled. Outside, the snow was marked with blood. A boot, still attached to a severed leg, lay in the snow. Massive tracks surrounded the camp. Each footprint was too wide and long for a human. The shape was wrong for a bear. Sarah stumbled, crying. Luke shouted, but a roar from the trees cut through the night. It was deep, guttural, unlike anything they knew. Something was out there, something watching. They ran. Branches whipped past as they fled. The snow was thick, the cold biting. Luke's footsteps trailed behind, until they didn't. Ethan turned. Luke was gone. He called out, barely above a whisper. No reply. They stopped. Sarah clutched Ethan's arm, both of them shaking. The snow continued to fall. The tracks were vanishing under it, and the thing in the trees remained silent. They crept back to camp before dawn. The tent was shredded. Gear was scattered. The snow was stained. Luke's boot still sat where they'd seen it. They waited out the dark beneath a large tree, too afraid to sleep. At first light, Ethan and Sarah began the long walk out. Hours later, they reached a ranger station. Shaken and half-frozen, they reported what had happened. A search team was dispatched. At the site, they found Luke's remains, stripped of flesh, bones cleaned too precisely. Nearby, strange rock piles had been stacked in patterns. Tracks unlike any known species circled the camp. Forensics later labeled it a predator attack. The area was closed. Locals whispered what officials wouldn't say. They called it the Walker from the Ruby. They said it had always lived there, deep beyond the trees. Watching. Ethan and Sarah left the wilderness for good. The memory stayed. And in the forests of the Yukon, snow kept falling. Quiet, waiting. On June 15, 1998, was a quiet, cloudy night in the Kinvara Hills, County Clare, Ireland. Sean Doyle, a 42-year-old truck driver, was taking a late-night drive through the hills to deliver farm supplies to a small village nearby. Sean lived in Galway, a city close to the coast, and had driven trucks all his adult life. He knew every road and shortcut in the area. His job kept him alone much of the time, but he liked it that way. He felt calm when driving through the empty countryside, especially late at night. That night, Sean chose to take a shorter route through Kinvara Hills to save time. It was a narrow, twisting road, surrounded by thick forests and wide open fields. Normally, Sean enjoyed this quiet drive, but tonight felt different. The hills seemed unusually quiet. He didn't see a single animal near the road. It felt like something had frightened them all away. Sean drove slowly, keeping his eyes on the road. Soon, a light rain began to fall, gently tapping on his windshield. The only sound he heard was the quiet hum of the truck's engine. Sean was starting to feel sleepy, but he shook himself awake, knowing he had to stay alert on the dark road ahead. Suddenly, he spotted something strange ahead on the roadside. Sean slowed the truck down. At first, he thought a man was crouching by the edge of the road, maybe hurt or needing help. Sean carefully stopped the truck a few feet away and turned off the engine. He grabbed his flashlight from the glove box, stepped outside, and aimed the light toward the figure. As the light hit the figure, Sean's heart began to beat faster. The crouched figure slowly stood up, and Sean felt his body freeze. It was not a person. It stood almost 9 feet tall, with huge shoulders and powerful arms. The creature's hands gripped something large and limp. Sean first believed it to be a deer carcass, but something felt wrong. The shape wasn't quite right, and its limbs hung oddly at the creature's side. Sean stared in fear as the creature quickly dragged its prize into the thick bushes beside the road. The branches cracked and shook violently. Sean could barely breathe. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Finally, he turned and stumbled back toward his truck, locking himself inside as quickly as possible. His hands shook, making it hard to grip the wheel. Sean sat still for several minutes, trying to calm his racing heart. After what felt like a long time, Sean finally started the truck again. He drove forward slowly, his eyes wide open, looking carefully at the bushes where the creature had vanished. As he passed the spot, he noticed deep, muddy footprints, stained red from the clay soil, leading into the trees. Sean didn't stop to examine them. He drove away, leaving the Kinvara Hills far behind. The following day, local police found the remains of a missing hiker near the same spot. The body was partially eaten, torn apart by something powerful. Red clay footprints, just like the ones Sean had seen, surrounded the remains. Authorities later announced that the hiker had been attacked by a wild boar, but Sean knew differently. He was certain the creature he saw was no boar. It was far too big, far too powerful, and had stood upright like a person. Sean never drove that road again. Within days, he quit his job as a long-haul truck driver, unable to forget the terrible sight he had witnessed. He moved away from Galway, trying to escape the memories. But no matter how far Sean went, he could never forget that night in the Kinvara Hills, when something unknown crossed his path, dragging its prey into the darkness. In the weeks after the event, life changed for Sean Doyle. He moved into a small house far from Kinvara Hills. He wanted to escape his memories, but they followed him everywhere. Sleep became hard for him. When he did sleep, bad dreams woke him up again. In these dreams, he saw the tall figure standing by the road. He felt the same cold fear as that night. Each morning, he felt tired and nervous. The police finished their report quickly. They stayed with the idea of a wild boar attack, even though many locals had doubts. The people who lived near Kinvara Hills talked quietly about what Sean had seen. They had heard stories before. Old tales spoke of a creature taller than any man, seen walking in the shadows of the hills. These stories were always told at night, around fires, and most people thought they were just old legends. Now, people weren't so sure. Many began to avoid the roads through Kinvara Hills. Farmers took longer routes to bring goods to town. Hikers stopped using the trails there. Soon, the roads grew quiet, and the hills felt empty. Sean never returned to driving trucks. He found a simple job at a store in a small village. He tried to live quietly, hoping people would forget about him. But the story stayed alive, carried by whispers from person to person. Some people visited Sean to ask him questions, but he never spoke about it. He kept his thoughts locked inside, knowing no one would believe him. Time passed, but Sean remained haunted. Even years later, he often woke in the night, listening to sounds outside his window. He waited, expecting to hear heavy steps or see large shadows move again. The memory of that night near Kinvara Hills never faded, and Sean Doyle knew it never would.